You don't earn a mark like that from a souvenir shop. Logan Price's voice cut through the low hum of the roadside diner, sharp and deliberate, the kind of tone that didn't ask questions. It passed judgment. The clink of silverware faded. Conversation stalled mid-sentence. Even the old ceiling fan seemed to slow, its blades pushing warm air in heavy, uneven circles. At the far end of the counter, William Carter didn't look up right away. He sat with his coffee untouched, fingers loosely wrapped around the mug as if it had long since gone cold. The sleeve of his worn flannel shirt had ridden up just enough to reveal it. A faded black tattoo etched into the thin, weathered skin of his forearm. A simple circle. Inside it, a 5-pointed star. The ink had bled over the decades, softened by time, but the shape remained unmistakably deliberate. Logan leaned in closer, one hand resting on the edge of the table, the other gesturing lazily toward the mark. He was built like a man who had never lost a fight, his posture relaxed with the quiet confidence of someone used to being the best in every room. The two men behind him, same build, same presence, watched with faint amusement, their silence more cutting than laughter. "I've seen Unit Inc., Logan continued, his voice low now. Almost conversational, but not that. Not anywhere that matters. Across from him, Emily Carter shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She glanced between Logan and her father, her expression tightening with a mix of embarrassment and unease. "Sir," she said quietly, forcing a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes, "it's just something old. It doesn't mean anything." The words hung in the air, heavier than she intended. William's grip on the mug didn't change. He didn't correct her, didn't even acknowledge it. Logan let out a short breath through his nose, something close to a laugh, but without any warmth. "Yeah," he said, straightening slightly. "That's what I figured." His eyes drifted back to the tattoo, narrowing just a fraction. "Because if it did mean something, I'd know it." The diner had gone quiet now. Not dramatically, no sudden gasps or raised voices, but the kind of silence that settles when people sense something just slightly off. A waitress paused near the register, her hand hovering over a stack of menus. An older man in a booth nearby lowered his newspaper just enough to watch over the top edge. William finally lifted his gaze. His eyes were pale, steady, and impossibly calm. They didn't challenge Logan. They didn't retreat either. They simply held, like still water that ran deeper than it looked. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Logan's smirk returned, easy and practiced. "You mind if I take a closer look?" he asked, already reaching before any answer could come. Emily's breath caught. "Hey," but it was too late. Logan's fingers closed around William's wrist, not rough, not aggressive, just confident. Certain. He turned the arm slightly, bringing the tattoo into the light streaming through the window. The faded lines caught the sun, the black ink turning almost gray against the weathered skin. Logan tilted his head, studying it like a puzzle that refused to make sense. "Huh," he muttered. Still nothing. William's voice came then, quiet but carrying in a way that made the air feel tighter. "Don't." Just one word. No anger. No urgency. But something in it made the waitress freeze completely, and the man with the newspaper slowly lower it to his lap. Logan didn't let go right away. His thumb brushed once across the edge of the circle, casual, dismissive. "Relax," he said. "It's just ink." And for the first time, something shifted, not in Logan, not in the room, but in William Carter's eyes, where the calm remained, but the silence beneath it grew heavier, like a memory rising just below the surface. Logan held William's wrist a moment longer than necessary, his grip steady, almost clinical, as if the man in front of him were nothing more than an object to be inspected, catalogued, dismissed. The diner air felt thicker now, like the moment before a summer storm when the sky has not changed yet, but something underneath it has. Emily's chair scraped softly against the floor as she shifted forward, her voice tighter this time. "Please, just let go." Logan glanced at her, then back at William, weighing something unspoken, and finally released his hand with a small shrug, as if the entire exchange had already lost its entertainment value. "You should be more careful where you wear things like that," he said, stepping back half a pace. "People might get the wrong idea." William lowered his arm slowly, pulling the sleeve of his flannel back down over the tattoo without looking at it. His movements were deliberate, unhurried. as if he had all the time in the world and none of it needed to be spent explaining himself. The coffee in front of him remained untouched. Emily let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. "He did not mean anything by it," she said, her tone softer now, almost apologetic, though it was not clear who she was apologizing to. Logan gave a faint, dismissive nod. "I know exactly what I meant," he replied. Behind him, one of the other operators, Daniel, shifted his weight, his eyes flicking briefly toward William with something that was not quite amusement anymore. It was subtle, easy to miss, but it was there. A hesitation. A second look. Logan did not notice. Or if he did, he ignored it. "You ever serve?" Logan asked suddenly, his voice casual again, like the conversation had reset. "Or is that just part of the story?" William did not answer right away. His gaze drifted past Logan, past the glass windows, to the empty stretch of highway outside where the afternoon heat shimmered above the asphalt. For a second, it looked like he was not in the diner at all. "A long time ago," he said finally. Logan smirked. "Yeah, that checks out." The words landed flat, but the tone behind them carried weight. Emily looked down at the table, her cheeks flushing slightly. "He does not talk about it," she added quickly, almost defensively. "He just lives a normal life." William's eyes shifted, just slightly, toward her. Not correcting, not confirming, just seeing. Daniel's gaze lingered on William now, longer than before. He had seen men like Logan his entire career. Loud confidence, sharp edges. But there was something else here, something that did not fit the pattern. It was in the way the older man had not reacted. Not once. Not when his arm was grabbed. Not when his daughter spoke for him. Not even when he was questioned. That kind of stillness was not weakness. Daniel knew that much. Across the room, the waitress quietly reached beneath the counter and picked up her phone, her movements careful, almost instinctive. She did not dial right away. She just held it, watching. Logan exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders as if shaking off the moment. "Well, he said, glancing at his team, "if that is all this is, then we are done here." But he did not move to leave. Not yet. His eyes flicked once more toward William's covered forearm, something unreadable passing through his expression before it disappeared just as quickly. At the table, Emily forced a small, uneasy smile, trying to pull the moment back into something normal. "We should go," she whispered. William did not stand. He did not reach for his coffee. He just sat there, quiet as before, his presence unchanged on the surface. But beneath it, something had shifted, slow and deep, like a current turning far below calm water, unseen by most, but not by everyone. Daniel could not look away anymore. It was not the tattoo itself that held his attention, but everything around it. The way William Carter had not flinched. The way his voice, when he spoke, carried no need to convince anyone. Daniel had spent years around men who proved themselves loudly, constantly reinforcing who they were with words, ranks, and stories. This was different. This was absence. And somehow, it felt heavier. Logan turned slightly, catching Daniel's lingering stare. "What?" he asked, a faint edge creeping back into his tone. Daniel shook his head once, subtle. "Nothing," he said, but his eyes drifted back to William for just a second too long. Logan followed the glance, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. He stepped forward again, drawn back and despite himself, like a man who had already made a judgment but was not entirely satisfied with it. "You said a long time ago," Logan pressed, his voice quieter now, more focused. "What does that mean?" William did not answer immediately. His fingers finally released the coffee mug, resting flat on the table as if grounding himself in the present. The diner lights reflected faintly in the surface of the untouched liquid, a still mirror. "It means," William said slowly, "it does not matter anymore." Logan let out a soft scoff. "It always matters." He leaned forward again, but this time there was less mockery, more insistence. "People do not just carry things like that for no reason." Emily shifted beside him, her discomfort growing. "We really should go," she said again, more firmly this time, reaching for her father's sleeve as if trying to pull him away from something she did not fully understand. William placed his hand gently over hers, stopping her. Not forceful, just enough. She froze, surprised by the simple gesture. It was not resistance. It was presence. Across the room, the waitress finally moved, stepping quietly into the narrow hallway behind the counter. Her phone was already in her hand now, her thumb hovering over the screen before she pressed a contact without hesitation. Back at the table, Logan straightened slightly, exhaling through his nose as if deciding whether to let it go or push further. He glanced once at his team, expecting the usual silent agreement, the shared confidence that came from being among the best. But Daniel was not looking at him anymore. Daniel was watching William. And there was something in his expression now that had not been there before. Recognition, maybe, or the beginning of it. Logan noticed. And for the first time, it bothered him. "You know," Logan said, his tone shifting again, trying to regain control of the moment. "We deal with people like this all the time. Stories, symbols, things that look important until you actually check them." He gestured lightly toward William's arm. "And they usually fall apart." William's gaze lifted again, meeting Logan's eyes directly this time. Not challenging, not defensive, just steady. "Do they?" he asked. Two simple words. But they did not sound like a question. The air tightened again. Daniel felt it clearly now. The room had not changed, the people had not moved, but something underneath it all had shifted into alignment, like pieces of a pattern coming together just out of sight. Outside, a distant vehicle passed along the highway, its low rumble fading quickly into the heat. Inside, the silence stretched. Logan opened his mouth to respond, but the words did not come as easily this time. Because for the first time since he had walked into the diner, he was no longer completely certain of the ground beneath him. And somewhere far beyond the walls of that small roadside place, a call had already been answered. The silence did not break. It stretched, thin and taut, like a wire pulled just short of snapping. Logan shifted his weight, subtle but enough to betray the crack forming beneath his confidence. He had stepped into this expecting control, expecting the usual outcome where the story ended exactly how he decided it would. But something about William Carter refused to follow that script. It was not defiance. It was not resistance. It was something quieter, something that did not need to push back because it had never been moved in the first place. Logan exhaled slowly, forcing a faint smile that did not quite settle on his face. "Yeah," he said, almost casually, though the tone lacked its earlier sharpness. "They do." But the words landed softer now, like they were testing the air instead of cutting through it. William did not respond. He did not need to. His gaze held steady, unchanging, and that was somehow worse. Across the table, Emily's fingers tightened around her father's sleeve again, her earlier embarrassment now giving way to something else. Confusion. She had never seen him like this, not exactly. He had always been quiet, always reserved. But this was different. This was not avoidance. This was presence. And it was unsettling in a way she could not explain. Logan glanced away first, just for a fraction of a second, his eyes flicking toward the window, as if searching for something outside to anchor himself. The bright afternoon sun washed across the glass, the highway beyond shimmering in waves of heat. Nothing had changed out there. Cars passed. Dust lifted. Life moved forward. Inside the diner, it felt like time had slowed by half. Daniel noticed it clearly now. He had seen hesitation before, in others, never in Logan. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there. And it meant something. He shifted his stance again, no longer leaning casually, but standing a little straighter, his attention fixed entirely on William. The older man had not moved. Not once since the moment Logan had let go of his wrist. That kind of stillness was not passive. It was controlled, deliberate, earned. "We are done here," Logan said finally, more to himself than anyone else, as if trying to close a door that had not fully opened. He turned slightly, signaling to his team, ready to step away, to leave the moment behind before it shifted any further. But his movement stalled halfway, because William Carter spoke again. "You are looking for something," he said, his voice low, steady, and certain. Logan stopped. The words were simple, but they landed with precision, like they had been placed exactly where they needed to be. Slowly, Logan turned back. "What is that supposed to mean?" he asked, the edge returning, though thinner now, stretched tight. William's eyes did not leave him. "It means," he said, "you already know it is not what you think." The diner seemed to hold its breath. Daniel felt it settle fully then, the unspoken realization forming into something solid. This was not a misunderstanding. This was recognition waiting to happen. Somewhere behind the counter, out of sight, a quiet voice spoke into a phone, low and urgent, words carried through a line that reached far beyond the small diner walls. Outside, in the distance, the faint sound of an approaching engine began to build, too far to identify, but close enough to be heard. Inside, Logan's jaw tightened again, but this time it was not confidence holding it in place. It was something else, something he could not name yet. And for the first time since he had stepped into the room, he did not feel like the one in control of how this story would end. The sound came again, clearer now, low and steady, rolling in from the distance like a storm that had not yet broken. It was not loud enough to command attention, but it was impossible to ignore once you noticed it. A deep mechanical hum, controlled, deliberate. Daniel's head turned slightly toward the window, his instincts catching it before his thoughts did. Logan did not move at first. His eyes were still locked on William, searching for something that refused to reveal itself. "You think you know what I am looking for?" Logan asked, his voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier edge. William did not answer immediately. He simply sat there, the weight of his presence unchanged, as if the question itself did not require a response. Outside, a dark vehicle appeared at the far end of the highway, its shape cutting through the shimmering heat as it approached faster than the others. It did not slow for the diner. It did not hesitate. It moved with purpose. Inside, the waitress stepped back into view from the hallway, her expression different now. Focused. She said nothing, but her eyes moved briefly to William, then to the front door. Emily noticed it. The shift. The way people were no longer just watching out of curiosity, but waiting for something they could not yet name. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What is going on?" William's gaze softened just slightly as he looked at her, the only visible change in him since the moment had begun. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said quietly. The reassurance was simple, but it did not settle her, because nothing about the room felt simple anymore. Logan finally broke eye contact, glancing toward the window as the vehicle pulled into the gravel lot outside. Tires pressed against loose stone, the sound sharp in the otherwise muted afternoon. Another vehicle followed. Then another. All of them the same. Clean. Unmarked. Purposeful. Daniel felt it settle fully now, the recognition clicking into place like a lock turning. This was not coincidence. This was response. Logan straightened, his posture adjusting instinctively, his awareness sharpening as the situation shifted beyond something he could dismiss. "You expecting company?" he asked, though the question already felt unnecessary the moment it left his mouth. William did not look toward the door. He did not turn to acknowledge the arrival. "No," he said, "but they were expecting me." The words landed differently, not as a statement of importance, not as a claim, just a fact, spoken without weight, without pride. And somehow, that made it heavier. Outside, car doors opened in sequence, the sound muted but distinct. Inside, every movement slowed. The man with the newspaper lowered it completely now. The waitress stepped aside from the counter, clearing a path without being told. Even the air itself seemed to shift, like the room was preparing for something it could not stop. Emily's hand tightened around her father's arm again, but this time she did not try to pull him away. She stayed close instead, her eyes fixed on the entrance, her confusion now mixed with something deeper, something closer to fear. Logan did not speak again. For the first time since he had walked in, he was not leading the moment. He was reacting to it. And as the handle on the diner door began to turn, slowly, deliberately, the last thing he realized was that whatever was about to step inside already knew exactly who William Carter was. The door opened without force, without urgency, but the sound it made carried through the diner like a signal. The low creak of the hinge cut clean through the silence, and every eye turned toward it at once. A man stepped inside. First, tall, composed, dressed in a dark uniform that did not need insignia to announce authority, though it carried them all the same. The light from outside framed him for a brief second before the door closed behind, sealing the room in a stillness that felt heavier than before. Two more figures followed, stopping just inside, their presence controlled, their eyes scanning once and then settling. They were not searching. They were confirming. Logan felt it immediately. The shift was no longer subtle. It was absolute. The balance in the room had moved, and it had not moved toward him. The man at the front did not speak right away. His gaze moved across the diner, taking in the room, the people, the tension that still lingered in the air. Then it stopped. On William Carter. For a fraction of a second, something passed through his expression. Not surprise. Not confusion. Recognition. Complete and immediate. He stepped forward, his pace measured, each step quiet against the floor but impossible to ignore. The others in the diner instinctively moved aside without being asked, clearing a path that led directly to the table. Emily felt her breath catch again, her hand tightening around her father's arm as the man approached. Logan did not move. He stood his ground, but it no longer felt like control. It felt like waiting. The man stopped a few feet from William. Close enough to speak. Close enough to see. Up close, the details were unmistakable now. The insignia on his chest. The bearing in his posture. This was not just authority. This was command at the highest level. Sir, the man said, his voice steady, respectful, and carrying a weight that silenced even the faintest movement in the room. One word, directed at William Carter. Not asked, not offered casually. Given. Logan's breath slowed, just slightly. The word did not fit. Not with the man he had just been questioning. Not with the assumptions he had already made. William looked up at him, calm as ever, as if none of this had changed anything at all. General, he replied simply. No surprise. No acknowledgement of the shift in the room. Just recognition returned. The title settled into the space between them, and everything around it seemed to lock into place. Daniel felt it fully now. The confirmation of what had only been a suspicion before. This was not a coincidence. This was connection. Direct. Personal. The general took one more step forward, his eyes never leaving William's face. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. It was not hesitation. It was something else. Something shared. Something understood without words. Behind him, the two men who had entered with him stood completely still, their attention forward, their presence reinforcing the gravity of the moment without drawing from it. Logan's jaw tightened again, but this time there was no edge behind it. Only realization. The kind that arrives too late to stop. Emily looked between them, her confusion deepening into something she could not yet process, her understanding struggling to catch up with what was unfolding in front of her. The general's gaze softened slightly, just enough to change the air around him. We have been looking for you, he said quietly. William gave the smallest nod. I know, he answered. And just like that, the room was no longer waiting for something to happen. It had already begun. No one moved. Not immediately. The words still lingered in the air, quiet but immovable, reshaping everything it touched. Logan felt it settle in his chest, heavy and undeniable. Sir. The general had said it without hesitation, without question, and more importantly, without explanation. That meant it did not need one. Logan's eyes shifted, slowly, almost reluctantly, back toward William Carter. The man had not changed. Not in posture, not in expression, not in presence. But now, everything around him had. The difference was not in who William was. It was in who everyone else realized he had been all along. The general took another step forward, closing the distance between them until he stood directly in front of the table. His gaze dropped briefly to William's covered forearm, the place where the tattoo lay hidden beneath worn fabric. For a moment, his expression tightened, not in anger, but in something deeper. Recognition mixed with memory. It has been a long time, the general said quietly. William gave a small nod. Long enough, he replied. The simplicity of the exchange carried more weight than any explanation could have. Behind them, Daniel straightened fully now, his earlier uncertainty gone, replaced by a clear understanding of what he was witnessing. This was not rank meeting rank. This was history meeting the present. Logan remained where he stood, but the ground beneath him no longer felt steady. His mind moved quickly, trying to reconcile what he had seen, what he had heard, and what it all meant. Delta Force. Years of training. Countless operations. He knew names. He knew units. He knew symbols. And yet, he had never seen that one. That meant only one thing. It was not meant to be seen. Emily looked between the two men, her confusion now edged with something sharper. Dad? She whispered, the word catching slightly as if it no longer felt large enough to hold what she was realizing. William did not look at her right away. His attention remained on the general, steady, grounded. The general exhaled slowly, then did something no one in the room expected. He reached up, his fingers moving to the sleeve of his own uniform. The motion was small, controlled, but every eye in the diner followed it instantly. Logan felt his focus lock in, his body going still as instinct took over. This mattered. He did not know why yet, but he knew it did. The fabric of the general's sleeve shifted as he rolled it back, inch by inch, revealing the forearm beneath. The movement was deliberate, unhurried, as if time itself had slowed to match it. Daniel's breath caught, just slightly. He already knew what he was about to see. He just needed to confirm it. The sleeve cleared the elbow. The skin beneath came into view. And there it was. The same circle, the same star, worn by time, softened by years, but unmistakable in its form. The room did not react with noise. There were no gasps, no sudden movement. Just silence. Complete and absolute. Logan stared at it, his mind locking for a fraction of a second before catching up. It was not possible. Except it was. Because it was right there, undeniable, mirrored perfectly between two men standing less than 3 feet apart. The general lowered his arm slightly, his gaze returning to William. "You were never supposed to be forgotten," he said, his voice steady but carrying something deeper beneath it. William's expression did not change, but his eyes softened just enough to reveal the weight of those words. "We all were," he answered quietly. And in that moment, Logan understood. Not everything. Not the details. Not the full story. But enough. Enough to know that whatever he had been mocking had never been his to judge. The silence did not break because there was nothing left to challenge it. It settled over the diner like a weight that no one dared disturb, pressing down on every movement, every breath, every thought that tried to form too quickly. Logan felt it most of all. The certainty he had walked in with, the quiet dominance he carried like second nature, had dissolved without resistance. Not shattered, not taken, simply rendered irrelevant. His eyes remained fixed on the matching tattoos, his mind replaying the moment over and over, searching for a way to undo what he now understood. But there was none, because nothing had changed except the truth being revealed. Daniel stood beside him, completely still now, his earlier hesitation replaced with something closer to respect. Not the kind given lightly or out of habit, but the kind earned through recognition. He lowered his gaze briefly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. Across the table, Emily's world had shifted in a way she could not yet process. She looked at her father again, really looked this time, as if seeing him for the first time without the filter of assumption. The quiet man who fixed things around the house, who spoke little, who never corrected anyone, now stood at the center of something far larger than she had ever imagined. "Why did you never tell me?" she asked softly, her voice unsteady but clear enough to carry in the silence. William turned his head toward her, his expression unchanged but his eyes gentler now. "Because it was never about being known," he said. The answer was simple. Too simple. But it carried a truth that did not need anything added to it. The general watched the exchange without interruption, his presence steady, respectful. He did not speak over it. He did not take control of it. He allowed it to happen, because he understood what it meant. Then, slowly, he brought his hand down to his side and straightened fully. The shift was subtle, but it carried authority in a different way now. Not command. Respect. He took one step back, creating space, then did something that no one in the room could have predicted just minutes earlier. He raised his hand in a formal salute. Not rushed. Not symbolic. Precise. Measured. Directed at William Carter. The movement froze the room completely. Logan felt it hit harder than anything else that had happened. This was not recognition anymore. This was honor. Given openly. Without hesitation. Without condition. William did not react immediately. He did not rush to return it. He simply looked at the general for a moment, as if weighing something that no one else could see. Then, slowly he stood. The chair moved back with a soft scrape against the floor, the sound sharp in the quiet. He straightened, his posture changing just enough to reveal something that had always been there, but never shown. Not age. Not wear. Discipline. He raised his hand and returned the salute. The motion was steady, exact, and carried a precision that time had not taken from him. The moment held. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the air seemed to pause around them. And in that silence, everything that needed to be understood was already clear. Logan lowered his gaze, just slightly. Not out of obligation. Not because anyone told him to, but because for the first time, he understood exactly where he stood. And it was not where he thought it had been. The salute lowered slowly, not as an ending, but as a transition. The air in the diner shifted again, but this time it was different. The tension that had filled the room was gone, replaced by something quieter, something steadier. Respect had settled in its place, and it did not need to announce itself. William Carter adjusted his sleeve with a small, almost absent motion, covering the tattoo once more as if it had never been meant to be seen at all. The general watched him for a moment longer, then gave a slight nod, not as a superior, but as a man acknowledging something that could never be repaid. "We have a car ready," the general said, his voice calm, measured. "If you are willing." William looked at him, then glanced briefly at Emily. She was still standing close, her eyes filled with something that had not been there before. Not confusion anymore. Understanding, still forming, still fragile, but undeniable. "I am not going anywhere," William said quietly. The general did not react with surprise. He simply nodded once more. "Of course," he replied, because he understood. Some men did not need to return to anything. They had already given everything that mattered. Logan stood where he was, the weight of the moment still settling into him piece by piece. He had faced pressure before, uncertainty before, but this was different. This was clarity, the kind that left no room for interpretation. Slowly, he stepped forward, not with the confidence he had entered with, but with something far more deliberate. He stopped a few feet from William, his posture straight, his voice controlled. "Sir," he said. The word did not come easily. It was not habit. It was chosen. William looked at him, his expression unchanged, but his eyes attentive. Logan hesitated for just a fraction of a second, then continued. "I was wrong. No excuses. No justification. Just truth." The room remained silent, but it was no longer heavy. It was open. William studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "That happens," he said simply. There was no judgment in it. No lesson delivered. Just acceptance. And somehow, that carried more weight than anything else could have. Daniel watched from the side, his respect now fully settled, not needing to be shown outwardly because it had already taken root. Emily exhaled slowly, her shoulders lowering as something inside her finally eased. She looked at her father again, and this time there was no distance left, only recognition. The general turned slightly, signaling to the men who had arrived with him. They stepped back toward the door, their presence fading as quietly as it had entered. The moment did not need protection anymore. It had already completed itself. William reached for his coffee at last, lifting the mug and taking a slow sip as if the world had returned to its normal pace. Outside, the vehicles remained, but their urgency had gone. They were no longer here to retrieve something lost. They had simply come to acknowledge it. Inside the diner, life began to move again. Quietly, respectfully. No one spoke of what had happened, but no one would forget it either. And at the center of it all, William Carter sat exactly as he had before. Unchanged, unmoved. Because some men do not become legends when the world notices them. They become legends long before that, and carry it in silence until the moment the world finally understands.